The sacred vow. The crystalline spires of the Temple of Celestial Light pierced the violet sky of Luminara, their surfaces refracting the light of 3 moons into rainbow cascades. Sister Nera stood at her chamber window, her iridescent skin shifting between shades of silver and pearl as she conducted her evening prayers. Her luminous eyes, with their characteristic star-like patterns of her species, reflected the celestial dance above. For 2 centuries, she had devoted herself to the order, finding peace in its ancient traditions and strict protocols. As one of the youngest ordained priestesses, she took pride in upholding the sacred vows of purity, wisdom, and devotion. Yet lately, something felt amiss within the temple's hallowed halls. The sound of boots on marble drew her attention. Through the gossamer curtains, she spotted a group of cargo handlers carrying heavy crates toward the underground vault. An unusual sight at this hour. More concerning was the furtive way they moved, checking corners as if avoiding detection. Naira's antenna twitched, picking up traces of anxiety in the air. Following her instincts, she glided silently through the shadows, her white robes whispering against the floor. As she neared the vault entrance, voices echoed from within. The humans must never discover what we're housing here. High Priestess Venna's voice carried a sharp edge Naira had never heard before. Our arrangement with the Syndicate stands. The artifacts will be moved tomorrow night. Naira's heart raced. Smuggling. In their sacred temple. Before she could process this revelation, a new voice joined the conversation. Deep, masculine, distinctly human. Your security measures are inadequate. The voice belonged to a tall human male who stepped into view. Even in the dim light, Naira could see the military bearing in his stance, the subtle ripple of strength beneath his black uniform. My team can ensure smooth transport, but it'll cost extra. Commander Drake. Venna's tone dripped with disdain. You'll receive payment when the job is done. Now leave before someone sees you. The human. Commander Drake turned to go, his sharp eyes scanning the shadows. For a brief moment, his gaze met Naira's hiding spot. She held her breath, certain he'd spotted her, but he moved on without pause. Once they dispersed, Naira fled to her chambers, her mind whirling. The Order had always taught that humans were dangerous, unpredictable creatures driven by base desires. Yet something about the commander's presence stirred an unfamiliar sensation in her chest. The next morning, Naira couldn't focus on her duties. During the sunrise meditation, she found herself dwelling on the previous night's discovery instead of achieving the prescribed state of empty serenity. She had to know more. Her chance came during the afternoon prayer break. Naira slipped away to the temple archives, searching for information about recent shipments. She was so absorbed in her investigation that she didn't hear the approaching footsteps until it was too late. Curious place for afternoon devotions, sister. Naira spun around to find Commander Drake standing in the doorway, his broad shoulders blocking her escape route. In the archive's natural light, she could see him clearly, strong features, dark eyes that seemed to see right through her, and a subtle scar along his jaw that hinted at a dangerous past. I was researching ancient texts, she stammered, her skin flickering with nervous patterns. Were you now? He stepped closer, his movement fluid and controlled. Strange. Those shipping manifests don't look very ancient to me. Naira straightened her spine, summoning her dignity. Why are you still here, Commander? I thought your business concluded last night. A slight smile tugged at his lips. So you were watching. I thought I sensed someone in the shadows. What's happening in this temple? Naira demanded, surprising herself with her boldness. What are you and the High Priestess involved in? Dangerous questions, sister. His expression grew serious. The kind that get people killed. I am sworn to protect the sanctity of this temple, she declared. If something corrupt is occurring here, I must know. Drake studied her for a long moment, then glanced at the doorway before lowering his voice. Meet me in the garden at midnight. If you're truly committed to uncovering the truth, I'll help you. But understand, once you step down this path, There's no going back. Before Naira could respond, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Drake slipped away like a shadow, leaving her with a racing heart and a decision that would change her life forever. That night, as Naira stood in the moonlit garden, she questioned every choice that had led her to this moment. Meeting a human in secret went against everything she'd been taught. Yet something deep inside told her this was right, that the real sin would be turning a blind eye to corruption within her beloved temple. As Drake's silhouette emerged from the darkness, Naira sent a silent prayer to the moons above. She was about to either save her temple or commit the greatest transgression of her life. Perhaps both. Shadows of truth. The garden's bioluminescent flowers cast an ethereal glow over Drake's features as he approached. Naira noticed he'd exchanged his military uniform for darker, closer-fitting clothing that helped him blend with the shadows. Despite her trepidation, she found herself oddly fascinated by the way he moved, precise yet fluid, like a predator. "You came," he said softly, keeping his distance as if afraid of startling her. "I wasn't sure you would." "The truth matters more than fear," Naira replied, her antenna detecting the complex mix of emotions emanating from him: caution, respect, and something warmer she couldn't quite identify. "Tell me what you know." Drake glanced around before producing a small holographic projector. "I'm not really a transport commander," he admitted, activating the device. "I work for the Galactic Heritage Protection Division. We've been tracking a series of artifact thefts across the sector, priceless relics vanishing from temples and museums." The hologram showed various sacred objects, each labeled with a location and date. Naira's heart sank as she recognized several pieces she'd seen being moved through the temple. "Your High Priestess, Vena, is just a middleman," Drake continued. "She provides storage and legitimacy to the operation. The real players are the Syndicate. They're using religious institutions as cover for their smuggling network." "But why would Vena participate in such sacrilege?" Naira's voice trembled with anger and disappointment. "She's led our order for over 3 centuries. Money? Power? We're not sure yet." Drake deactivated the hologram. "That's why I need your help. As a priestess, you have access to areas I can't reach. Together, we might be able to expose the whole operation." Naira knew she should refuse. Working with a human, especially a male, went against every tenet of her training. Yet as she met Drake's earnest gaze, she saw none of the base desires or violent impulses her teachings had warned about. Instead, she found integrity and a genuine desire for justice. "If I help you," she said carefully, "I need your word that any innocent sisters won't be harmed. Many here know nothing of this corruption." "You have my word," Drake promised, his voice softening. "I protect the innocent. It's why I do this job." Over the next few weeks, Naira and Drake developed a careful routine. During the day, she maintained her duties while quietly observing suspicious activities. At night, they would meet in secret corners of the temple grounds to share information. Drake taught her the basics of surveillance and evidence gathering. Naira found herself impressed by his patience and expertise. His hands were gentle as he showed her how to operate various scanning devices, and she tried to ignore the pleasant tingling sensation whenever they touched. For his part, Drake became increasingly fascinated by his alien partner. Naira's natural grace and quick intelligence challenged his preconceptions about the cloistered order. He caught himself watching the way her skin shimmed with emotion, how her star eyes sparkled when she made a breakthrough in their investigation. One night, as they reviewed shipping manifests in a hidden alcove, their fingers brushed reaching for the same datapad. Naira felt a jolt of electricity race through her body, her skin flickering with patches of rose gold, the color of attraction that she'd been taught to suppress. Drake noticed the color change. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice husky with concern. "Yes, Naira struggled to steady her breathing. "It's nothing." A momentary lapse in control. But Drake's hand remained near hers, his warmth radiating between them. "You know, where I come from, losing control isn't always a bad thing." Sometimes it means you're finally being honest with yourself. Naira looked up, meaning to refute this dangerous idea, but the intensity in his dark eyes stole her words. They were sitting closer than she'd realized, close enough that she could see flecks of gold in his irises, feel his breath ghost across her luminescent skin. A distant bell shattered the moment. The call to evening prayers. Naira jumped back, her professional mask sliding back into place even as her heart raced. "I should go," she said quickly, gathering her robes. "The sisters will notice if I'm absent." Drake nodded, but caught her wrist gently before she could flee. "Naira, be careful. We're getting closer to something big. I can feel it." Ven has been making more secure calls, moving things faster. His thumb brushed over her pulse point, sending shivers down her spine. "I couldn't bear it if anything happened to you." The naked concern in his voice shook Naira more than any physical touch. She was supposed to be above such emotions, devoted only to the celestial powers. Yet here she was, trembling at the simple care of a human man. "I'll be careful," she promised, reluctantly pulling away. As she hurried toward the temple proper, Naira's mind whirled with confusion. She'd committed herself to exposing corruption, yes, but she hadn't expected this, these forbidden feelings growing stronger each day. That night, as she knelt before the sacred moonstone altar, Naira's prayers were troubled. She asked for guidance, for strength to resist temptation. But when she closed her eyes, all she could see was Drake's face. All she could feel was the ghost of his touch on her wrist. She was playing a dangerous game, and her heart was no longer sure of the rules. Heart's rebellion. Thunder rumbled across Luminara's violet sky as Naira slipped through the temple's lower chambers. Her white robes traded for a darker novice's habit. The weekly shipment had arrived early, disrupting her usual meeting with Drake. Something felt wrong about the timing. She pressed herself against a column as two guards passed, their weapons far more sophisticated than the ceremonial staves the temple typically employed. When they'd gone, she continued toward the vault, her antenna detecting increasing levels of anxiety in the air. A familiar voice echoed from around the corner. "The buyer's getting impatient, Venna. We need to move everything tonight." Naira's blood ran cold. It was Syndicate leader Thex, whom she'd seen in Drake's intelligence files. What was he doing here in person? Tonight, Venna's usually controlled voice held an edge of panic. "Impossible. We haven't cleared the security protocols. That human inspector is still sniffing around." "Then eliminate him," Thex growled. "You're not paid to make excuses." Naira's heart stopped. They were talking about Drake. She had to warn him. Turning to retrace her steps, she found her path blocked by a guard she hadn't heard approach. Well, he sneered, grabbing her arm. "Look what we found." Moments later, Naira was shoved into the vault chamber, her knees hitting the cold floor hard. Venna's face twisted with recognition and rage. "Sister Naira, I should have known. Always so pure, so perfect. Yet here you are, spying like a common thief. You've corrupted everything our order stands for." Naira shot back, her skin pulsing with angry crimson. "The sacred relics aren't yours to sell." Thex circled her slowly, his cybernetic eye whirring as it scanned her. "This is the one who's been helping the human. She doesn't look like much." "I suspected she was involved," Venna said coldly. "Ever since she started missing evening prayers. Tell us, Naira, where is your human friend now?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Naira replied, praying her skin wouldn't betray her lie. Venna nodded to one of the guards, who struck Naira across the face. Her head snapped to the side, silver blood trickling from her lip. "Try again," Venna suggested. "Where is Commander Drake?" Before Naira could respond, the vault's lights went dark. Emergency sirens blared as something metal clattered across the floor. Smoke filled the chamber, acrid and disorienting. Chaos erupted. Blaster fire lit up the darkness in brilliant bursts. Naira felt strong arms wrap around her, pulling her to her feet and toward the exit. She knew Drake's touch instantly, even before he whispered, I've got you." They ran through the temple's winding corridors, pursuit close behind. Drake fired back occasionally, keeping their attackers at bay. His other arm never left Naira's waist, steadying her as they fled. They burst out into the rain-soaked temple gardens. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the path to Drake's hidden shuttle. They were halfway there when a blast caught Drake in the shoulder, spinning him around. Drake. Naira caught him before he could fall, supporting his weight as they staggered the last few meters to safety. Inside the shuttle, she helped him into the pilot's seat. "I'm fine," he grunted, firing up the engines. "Just a graze." "How did they make you?" "They didn't," Naira said, dropping into the co-pilot's chair. "I was trying to warn you. They're moving everything tonight. They were planning to kill you." Her voice broke as the reality of everything hit her. Drake reached over with his good arm and squeezed her hand. "Hey, look at me. We're okay. We've got proof of their operation now. My team is already moving in to secure the evidence." Naira stared at their joined hands, her skin swirling with complex patterns of fear, relief, and something deeper she could no longer deny. "I can never go back," she whispered. "I've broken every vow." "You followed your conscience," Drake corrected softly. "That's worth more than any vow." His thumb traced gentle circles on her palm, sending shivers up her arm. "Naira, when I saw them hurting you, I've never been so scared, or so angry." She looked up, meeting his intense gaze. The shuttle's cabin suddenly felt very small, very intimate. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the strong lines of his face, the warmth in his dark eyes. "The Order teaches that humans are ruled by base emotions," Naira said quietly. "That love between our species is impossible, a perversion of the natural order." Drake's free hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb gently wiping away the silver blood from her split lip. "And what do you believe?" Instead of answering, Naira leaned forward and pressed her mouth to his. The kiss was tentative at first, then deepened as Drake pulled her closer, tangling his fingers in her starlight hair. Her skin blazed with patterns of pure gold, the color of joy, of passion, of love freely given. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, Drake rested his forehead against hers. "We should get somewhere safe," he murmured. "There's a lot we still need to figure out." Naira nodded, but didn't pull away. Here in his arms, she felt truly safe for the first time in her life. Whatever came next, whatever price she had to pay for following her heart, she knew this was right. As they lifted off into the storm-torn sky, leaving behind everything she'd ever known, Naira realized that sometimes the greatest act of faith was learning to believe in love. Price of freedom. Drake's safe house was a modest apartment in Luminara's merchant district, its windows tinted against the perpetual twilight. Naira stood at the glass, watching ships drift between the towering spires, while Drake made secure calls to his agency contacts. "The temple's been locked down," he reported, joining her at the window. His injured shoulder was freshly bandaged, but he moved stiffly. "Venice claiming it's a spiritual retreat, but my team managed to document the artifacts before they could move them." "It won't be enough," Naira said softly. "Vena has powerful allies in the Celestial Council. They'll claim the relics are legitimate temple property." Drake stepped closer, his warmth radiating against her back. "Then we need to prove the connection to the Syndicate. The buyer Thex mentioned. Do you know anything about them?" Naira turned to face him, her skin rippling with troubled silver patterns. "Only whispers. They call themselves the Void Seekers. They believe the sacred relics hold powers that could." She hesitated, embarrassed by what might sound like superstition. "Could what?" Drake prompted gently. "Could pierce the veil between dimensions. Access realms beyond our understanding." She shook her head. "It sounds absurd, I know. Not as absurd as you might think." Drake pulled up a holographic display. "Look at these energy readings my team recorded from the vault. The artifacts aren't just valuable. They're generating some kind of quantum resonance we've never seen before." Before Naira could respond, a priority alert flashed across the display. Drake's expression darkened as he read it. "What is it?" Naira asked, her antenna detecting his spike of concern. "The buyers' meeting has been moved up. It's happening tonight, at an abandoned temple on the outer rim." He met her eyes gravely. "Naira, if they're really trying to breach dimensional barriers, the consequences could be catastrophic," she finished. "The ancient texts speak of times such powers were misused. Whole worlds were lost." Drake ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "My backup's hours away. By the time they arrive, it'll be too late." Naira straightened, her star eyes blazing with determination. "Then we go alone." "It's too dangerous," Drake protested. "Vex and his people will be there, probably Venna too. They already want us dead." "They were my sisters once," Naira said quietly. "I know their ways, their weaknesses, and you know the Syndicate. Together, we might have a chance." Drake studied her for a long moment, then pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. "I just found you," he murmured. "I can't lose you." Naira's skin flushed rose gold at his touch, but her voice was steady. "You won't. My faith may have changed, but it hasn't weakened. I believe in us, in what we can accomplish together." Their kiss was fierce and quick, a promise sealed in the fading light. Within the hour, they were aboard Drake's shuttle again, racing against time toward the abandoned temple. The ancient structure rose from a desolate plain like the skeleton of some massive beast, its once grand spires now crumbling. They set down some distance away, using the rugged terrain for cover. "Security's lighter than I expected," Drake muttered as they observed the entrance. Only a handful of guards patrolled the perimeter. "They wouldn't want to draw attention," Naira reasoned. "And they believe we're no threat anymore." Her lips curved in a grim smile. "Their arrogance will be their undoing." They moved in silence through the temple's shadowy corridors, Naira leading the way. Her time in the Order had taught her the standard layout of such places. The most sacred chambers, where the ceremony would likely take place, would be at the heart of the structure. They were nearing their goal when voices echoed ahead. Drake pulled Naira into an alcove, their bodies pressed close as a group of robed figures passed. She recognized several members of the Celestial Council among them. "The hour approaches," one was saying. "Soon the barriers will fall, and true power will be ours." When they had gone, Naira and Drake exchanged worried looks. "We need to hurry," she whispered. The central chamber was vast, its domed ceiling open to the stars. Dozens of figures gathered around a circular altar where the stolen artifacts had been arranged in a complex pattern. Energy crackled between them, casting eerie shadows. Venna stood at the head of the altar, her arms raised as she chanted in the ancient tongue. Vex and his syndicate enforcers ringed the chamber, weapons ready. But it was the dark figure observing from the shadows that made Naira's blood run cold. "The Void Speaker," she breathed. "Leader of the Seekers. I thought they were just legends." Drake's hand found hers in the darkness, squeezing gently. "Legends or not, we have to stop this. Any ideas?" Naira studied the array of artifacts, her years of religious training clicking into place. "The ritual requires perfect harmony between the relics. If we can disrupt even one, the whole thing falls apart," Drake finished. He checked his weapon. "I'll create a distraction. You get to that altar." "Drake." Naira caught his arm before he could move. "Whatever happens, I love you." His dark eyes softened as he cupped her face. "I love you too. Now let's go save the universe." As Drake's first shots rang out, chaos erupting in the chamber, Naira raced toward the altar. She just prayed they weren't already too late. Love's redemption. The chamber erupted into pandemonium. Drake's precise shots took down several syndicate guards while forcing others to dive for cover. Naira sprinted through the chaos, her feet barely touching the ground as she wove between panicked council members. "Stop her." Venna's voice cut through the din. "She'll ruin everything." Naira reached the altar just as the artifacts began to pulse with increasing intensity. The air itself seemed to twist and distort around them, reality bending under the strain. She grabbed for the central relic, a crystalline sphere that served as the focal point of the array. A force like lightning shot through her body. Naira screamed as ancient power coursed through her veins, her skin blazing with patterns she'd never seen before. Through the pain, she heard Drake calling her name. Step away from the altar. The Void Speaker's voice resonated in her mind, rich with dark promise. Join us, Sister Naira. With your natural connection to the sacred, you could help us reshape existence itself. Don't listen to them, Drake shouted, trying to fight his way closer while holding off Vex's men. Whatever they're offering, it's not worth the cost. The Void Speaker glided forward, darkness rippling beneath their hooded robe. What do you know of cost, human? Your kind barely comprehends the forces at work here, but Naira understands. Don't you, child? The power to transcend all boundaries, all rules. Naira's fingers tightened around the crystal sphere as understanding dawned. You're wrong, she gasped through the pain. I finally understand what these relics truly are. They're not meant for power. They're meant for communion. For bringing people together, not tearing reality apart. She looked at Drake, seeing in his eyes everything she'd been taught was impossible. Love, trust, acceptance across the boundaries of species and belief. In that moment, she knew exactly what she had to do. Instead of trying to disrupt the energy, she opened herself to it completely. Light exploded from her body as centuries of sacred knowledge flowed through her consciousness. The other artifacts responded, their resonance changing to match her pure intent. No, the Void Speaker lunged forward, but Drake was faster. He tackled the dark figure, wrestling them away from Naira. Whatever you're doing, love, do it fast. He called out, trading blows with the surprisingly strong being. Naira began to sing, her voice carrying the ancient harmonies that had been lost to time. The artifacts pulsed in rhythm with her song, their energy no longer chaotic, but flowing in perfect synchronization. Vena tried to intervene, but found herself frozen in place as silver light filled the chamber. What are you doing? She demanded. What these relics were always meant for, Naira replied, her voice echoing with power. Revealing truth, healing division, showing us that love is the greatest force in any dimension. The crystal sphere in her hands erupted with radiance. Waves of pure light swept through the chamber, through the entire temple. Where they touched, corruption and darkness burned away. The Void Speaker howled as their true form was revealed, a being of living shadow that quickly dissipated in the cleansing brilliance. When the light finally faded, Naira swayed on her feet. Drake caught her before she could fall, cradling her gently. I've got you, he murmured. I've always got you. Around them, syndicate members and corrupt council officials lay stunned, their crimes exposed for all to see. Vena knelt in the center of the chamber, her elaborate robes reduced to simple cloth, tears streaming down her face. What have we become? The former high priestess whispered. We lost our way so completely. Naira looked up at Drake, managing a tired smile. Sometimes we have to lose our way to find a better path. His answering smile was tender as he helped her stand. Speaking of paths, what happens now? Before Naira could respond, more figures appeared in the chamber doorway, Drake's backup finally arriving, along with uncorrupted members of the Celestial Council. In the chaos of arrests and explanations that followed, Naira never left Drake's side. Hours later, they stood together on a balcony overlooking the temple grounds. The first rays of dawn were painting Luminara's sky in shades of gold and rose. The council wants to reform the order, Naira said softly. They've asked me to help lead the change, to create something new that honors the old traditions while embracing a more open future. She turned to face Drake, her skin shimmering with nervous patterns. But I won't accept unless, Drake prompted, taking her hands in his. Unless you'll stay, help me build this new future. The Order needs to change its views on humans, on love. She bit her lip. And I need you. Drake pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. I already requested a permanent assignment to Luminara. Wherever you are is where I belong. Their kiss was gentle, full of promise, as the rising sun bathed them in light. Behind them, the ancient temple stood ready to embrace a new dawn, just as Naira had embraced a love that transcended every boundary. In the end, her greatest test of faith had led her not to deny love, but to discover that true devotion could encompass both the sacred and the personal. In Drake's arms, she had found not sin, but salvation. And together, they would forge a path that proved love truly was the most powerful force in any universe.